Why was I just thinking of like a giant banana? I don't know. Sorry.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
This is Everything Hurts and I'm Dying, the podcast to remind you that health and fitness is for everyone. It doesn't have to be miserable. You're allowed to enjoy yourself. Join me, your host, Julia Krause, as we navigate together through the world of toxic fitness, six-pack abs, Instagram booties, and no days off to find real human experiences. Our world is different. It is inclusive and accessible. It is fun and challenging. It is friendly and supportive. It is open, real, honest, vulnerable, and brave. Everyone's journey of health and fitness is different, as it should be, and I'm here to help you along on yours. Welcome. You belong here.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything Hurts and I'm Dying, the podcast about health and fitness, where we describe health and fitness. I'm sorry to surprise you with that fact. Today, we are here with the amazing Rita Holp. Rita, hi.
Hi, Julia. It's nice to be back.
I'm very happy to have you back. It's very exciting to have you back. Will you please remind our audience who you are?
So, dear audience, I work with Julia. We work in the same gym, and we work here as personal trainers, and I'm also a nutritionist, which is also my passion. So, I'm looking forward to this hour or so to chat about that.
I'm really excited. So we brought Rita back because a lot of you guys have had a lot of questions about nutrition lately. So we had to bring Rita back, obviously. A, for her shining personality, and B, for her actual information that she has in her brain. And I want her to share all that information with us. So we have a ton of questions and answers today. So stay tuned, and we will get to it very soon.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
So, question number one for Rita. How's your week? What are you doing and what are we working on?
Okay, so my week has been interesting. I've been just recently back from holiday, so I just settling back in, making sure that I get to see all my clients and just getting back to the routine. But I'm also feeling a little bit like run down. So this is a struggle coming to Thursday now. But yeah, all is going well actually. Training has been all right so far. We'll see how it goes today. If it goes well, then I'm officially not sick. That will be a win for the week. Other than that, still training towards that heavy back squat that we talked about last time, so I won't really go into much more detail about that. It's progressing slowly, as all heavy lifts do. And then I'm also adding in some more varied conditioning bit. Nice. In preparation for a potential comp at the end of November.
Tell me more about this potential comp at the end of November.
Okay, so I'm a little nervous about it. It will be my first comp. It will be like a fitness competition with several different exercises in like different workouts. It's a team comp as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing how I can work as part of a team. I'm usually a lone wolf, so it will be interesting to see that. And it's kind of interesting for me to see how well I'll be able to push myself, and I always wanted to try that, so I'm looking forward to trying that. Obviously there are things that I now need to improve loads on that have not been priorities for me in the past couple of months really, so I'm just going to focus on those for the next 8 weeks and just try to bring my endurance up and just maintain strength and just sort of improve performance really.
Nice. What are the specific things that you were looking to kind of bring up?
So I am not really a cardio person, so I avoid it as much as I can, apart from like walking. I do enjoy heat cardio, not so much like LISS, which would be like more paced, longer duration cardio. Which is not necessarily anything that I will need for the comp, but it is definitely a good training strategy to improve that as well. So I'm primarily looking to improve performance on the ski and the rower and the assault bike. So those are the main ones that I know might be a struggle for me. But then on top of that, it's like technical things in terms of like barbell and dumbbell work, lifting, and just really agility and just being quick on my feet to be able to transition efficiently between exercises. But we don't know the workouts in advance, so I only have like a faint idea of what it will be. I think we'll figure it out closer to come. So we shall see.
When do they tell you? Do they tell you like the day of? Or?
Honestly, I can't remember. I feel like someone said it's the day of, and someone said it we'll know it like a couple of weeks prior, maybe. I'm not sure.
Such a big difference.
Yeah, it is a big difference. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to bail on this comp, whatever happens. So if I know it on the day, or if I know it 2 weeks in advance, then I just have more time to stress, or maybe like improve on those couple of things. But I have a rough idea of what my weaknesses are, and I will just try to make sure that I can work on those, because since I'm usually programming my own training, obviously I'm biased, and I prioritize those things that I enjoy doing and I'm better at, so I do more of those, so I just get better and better at those things. So now I have to make sure that I do the things that I don't like as much. So we shall see. It will be an interesting 2 months.
I've realized that when you do your own programming, and I use you as like the general you, when you do your own programming, you're either sort of like, it's either one or the other. So you either program the stuff that you like, or you program the stuff that you don't like. And so you're either kind of like playing into your strengths, or you're like a glutton for punishment. And I feel like no one is ever like balanced about it.
Yeah, I guess. But also when I say like, it's usually not like a subjective like necessarily, it's also like an objective like I don't know a lot of people who like lunges, for example, and I really struggle when I do my like heavy walking lunges, but I know how good they are for me, so objectively I like what they will help me achieve, so I still program them. I mean more like things that I find them like a bit annoying, like I've never really got on with like kettlebell snatches, because I keep like bashing the kettlebells into my forearms, so obviously there's stuff that I need to work on to improve my technique there, so these are the sort of things that I feel like it will be useful if I'm kind of forced to practice them more.
Nice. I like that.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Welcome back, guys. Yeah, I was going to say I'm apologizing for some of our voices this week, because I think everybody in this room is run down a little bit and getting a little bit sick. So I do apologize for the way that our voices sound. We are going to jump straight into the questions for Rita. So all these questions are from you guys, our lovely audience. Thank you for sending them in. Here we go. Let's just jump in. So question number 1 is, how much protein do I actually need?
Okay, so this is a question that I get asked quite frequently, and obviously not knowing who sent this question in, I have no idea what their goals are, or what they're working towards, or what their like current situation is, and we can't really give blanket recommendations to if we want like an optimal solution. So I'm just going to give some recommendations with the goals in mind that could suit whoever is listening to us, and now hopefully everyone can figure out which category they fall into, and that might be just a useful way to look at it. So basically protein recommendations used to be very different compared to how they are now. Now it's been like decades ago. Sorry. Now in most places you get a recommendation based on your body weight. So you would need that information to make sure that it's actually suitable for your body, and there's massive differences between people of different sizes. So you can't really look at protein recommendations without looking at size and body weight. So all the recommendations that I'm going to mention today will be based on that, and I'm using a metric system, so it will be in kilograms of body weight fine. Before anyone gets a bit confused with stones and pounds. So basically for general health, as a bare minimum, we are recommended to eat 0.8 grams of protein per body weight in kilograms. So whatever is your body weight, you might multiply it by 0.8. and you get that answer. So if you're a 100 kilogram individual, you are going to need to eat 80 grams of protein as a bare minimum within the day. Usually, this minimum is really not a good starting point for those of us who train, and I imagine the majority of our audience would be into fitness and into some sort of training, so we will have to consider increasing that protein target just to optimize training recovery. However, how much we increase it by is also dependent on personal preference and like personal goals, because if someone is trying to let's say optimize muscle gain, they might need a little more. But if someone is massively into like performance sports or like endurance sports, they will have to consider how that protein intake fits into their overall diet and their overall like caloric intake. And I often see the two ends of the spectrum where people eat either too little or too much protein for their specific goals. Too little is very common if someone is just starting on their journey, and too much is very common if someone is like a seasoned athlete, and then they just try to cram in as much as they possibly can. The problem with that is that obviously a calorie balance will be important for whatever goal we have in mind, and protein will take up a portion of that caloric intake. So if our protein intake is very, very high, we are going to have less calories left over for carbs and fat. And carbs fueling performance really well. For certain athletes, it would be very important that they make sure that they are hitting those targets to optimize their performance and their glycogen restoration from training, for example. So therefore, I don't really like to give a really, really high protein intake recommendation for those athletes. But for people who are trying to lose weight or elderly populations, a higher protein intake would be potentially more beneficial, especially for the elderly because of anabolic resistance, which means that they are going to need more to have a similar effect after each meal. So if we are looking at like general population who are training for like fun and just like not to like an athlete level, between 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per body weight per kilogram would be a decent starting point. We don't absolutely have to worry about much more than that. And for anyone who tries to maximize muscle gain or are trying to lose body fat, for example, therefore are in a calorie deficit, a higher intake could be useful just because it helps with satiety as well. So maybe 1.8 to 2.2 grams. And for elderly populations, I would also recommend like 2 grams and above. I find that that's the population that really struggles with the protein intake, just because appetite tends to reduce as well, and since protein is very satiating, it's very, very rare that pensioners eat 2 grams of protein per body weight in kilograms. So it's just interesting. It could be an interesting consideration if we have elderly relatives to educate them or just to try to help them out with an increased intake. And then obviously in case of someone recovering from surgery or illness, an increased protein intake can also help with that and just help with rebuilding the immune system and such.
Nice. Very good.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty, welcome back. We are on to question number 2 with our lovely nutritionist, Rita Holp. Hi, Rita.
Hi, Julia.
So question number 2 is, what is the best source of carbohydrates?
Okay, so I love questions like this because the answer is never what people want. Like, I will never be able to give an answer that like, oh, this is the single best source of carbohydrate, because there's just so many considerations, just like there's no single best source of fats or proteins or like really anything in life, because a lot of it comes down again to personal goals, but personal preferences as well. And I think often people overlook that fact that their preference is sometimes more important than what the science says.
Yes.
And I think it's probably because we have been, at least when I was growing up, fitness has been this hardcore thing where you're either on it and like you're 100% and you're dedicated and grind and everything, all those no pain, no gain words
No
and
excuses.
expressions. Yeah, exactly. That is not a long term or at least a sustainable way to look at things, and this is not really suitable for probably 99% of the people that I've come across. There's always people who are really dedicated and they are like on it 100% of the time over a certain period of time, but they will like for a lack of better term, fall off the bandwagon at one point because either their goals might change and they don't feel like they need to be as strict, or they just can't maintain it. So getting back to the question, really, I won't give you an answer to what is the best source of carb, but I will give you like more of an explanation why there is no answer, because there is a consideration based on, for example, what do you need that carb for? So, for example, in our world, we will need the carbs to fuel our performance. So if we want to train better, we want to eat enough carbs. But for example, how close to our training we are eating will determine what is the best source of carbohydrate for that individual meal. The closer we eat to the training, the more like the simpler carbohydrates we will we are going to choose more
simple carbohydrates versus complex
so
carbohydrates.
simple carbohydrates will be a better choice if we are eating closer to our training sessions, and complex carbohydrates will be a potentially better choice if we are eating a longer amount of time before our training sessions. Just because of how absorption and digestion happens, we will have to make these sort of considerations. So also, if someone has like a dip during their training session, they might just reach for simple sugars. Like it's not uncommon just in our gym, but in loads of other gyms to pass a bag of Haribos around, and then everyone just gets back to their training after consuming a handful, just because that's such a nice quick source of carbohydrate, and it gets broken down fairly easily in the body, so we get some quick fuel for our sessions. So really, I think the best source will be dependent on when you're eating and what you like to eat. You don't have to eat something that you don't like, because there's just so many options. Carbs are literally the easiest macronutrient, in my opinion, to cover in our diet. Nice. So why not make it as varied as we want it to be?
Cool. I love that. Could you just give some really quick examples of simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates for the audience?
So I often get asked what to eat if you like get up in the morning and you have a training session like first thing in the morning. And I find that usually eating something like a banana is a decent option for most people, depending on your size and the size of the banana. Some people get away with just eating a half because it is important.
Why was I thinking that the banana would be like human size? Because it depends on your size and the size of the banana. Why was I just thinking of like a giant banana? I don't know. Sorry. That was my thought process.
I mean, I would love to see that if there was like, if anyone had access to giant bananas. No, in the end. But yeah, if you have like more time before your training session, let's say you're training like around 4 p.m. and you have time to have like a proper lunch, then just have something more complex, like have a combination of whatever, a whole grain rice with vegetables. That would be a great source of fuel because you're eating about 2 to 3 hours before your training session.
Nice, very nice. Awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty. So question number 3, Rita. How do I stop late night snacking?
Okay, so I think I will approach this question from like a bit further away from. So usually when people feel like they don't make like a conscious decision to snack, but it just kind of happens, or like they because I obviously, if it was someone who I know I shouldn't snack, so I'm not going to snack. It's usually the person who I know I shouldn't really snack, but I'm still snacking. How do I avoid that? I find that in most cases it's due to one of two things. Either absolute restriction, which means that you are maybe like restricting your caloric intake, so you're actually under eating, either on purpose because of dieting or by accident. Or it can be relative or perceived restriction, which can mean that you are eating to your calorie targets for like maintenance or even a surplus, but you're not necessarily choosing food items that you would like to have in your diet. And then maybe late at night, you're craving those foods, and then you can't really resist any longer, and that's when you tend to eat them. So both of these have like different ways that we can cope with them. Obviously, if our goal is to lose body fat, we will have to be in a calorie deficit. So it's inevitable that we would have to be in a restricted state. But if we are trying to concentrate on choosing foods that are more satiating, let's say higher fiber or higher protein, and just making sure that our dinner meal is like a satisfying meal, then we can potentially find it easier to start snacking late at night. Another thing that I think is it will sound so obvious, but I think a lot of people don't think about it, is just go to bed earlier. It's just so easy. I think it's just one of the best like weight loss hacks around. If you sleep enough, you will be less hungry, but also you have less time to actually eat. And late night snacking just means to me that it's probably like after 10. So after 10, especially if you get up like at 6 or 7 in the morning, like you should really probably go to bed so that you have your 8 hours of sleep. So it can be just a simple solution. Wash your teeth after your evening meal and then go to bed early. But if it's more about perceived restriction, I usually find it's a better way to deal with it if you actually include the foods that you would otherwise miss in your like daily diet. So often if someone finds that they tend to go on a binge in the evening of like chocolate or cookies or whatever it might be, then I might recommend that they have a piece of chocolate after lunch or after dinner or both, and then that will lose its sort of power over them. And also resisting throughout the entire day when you really crave something, it just really tests your willpower, and by the time you get to the evening when you're tired or stressed and all day you've been just thinking about having that snack, you might just give up and might just give in really. So it is not a viable solution to restrict all of the food items that you would be craving. I think it is similar in case of someone doing like a more restrictive diet throughout the week and finds themselves binging in the weekend. So that usually comes down to the same reasons. So I would just recommend that if that is constantly the case, clearly that diet is not working for you, especially if you end up overeating through those late night snackings, so that you are not getting the results that you want. Something has to change. If it's not working out, something will just need to change.
Yeah, nice. I think a lot of people need to realize that willpower is a finite resource. So you only have so much willpower in a day. Like you have like 10 willpower points. And if you're constantly using those points on, you know, holding yourself back from things throughout the day, you sort of run out of points at the end of the day.
And food is just a single thing on amongst a myriad of things. So we just have to make so many decisions, and in many cases those decisions are like not even related to eating.
Exactly.
So it is tiring, and especially because many of us find comfort in eating. If we are at the end of a long day, it's not going to feel like a natural choice to say no to snacking, because we are going to find it comforting and we are going to enjoy the actual experience as well as the food.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty, guys. So we are going to take a quick time out of the questions to get to our weekly segment called Beefcake. And it's all about our gym beef. So, what's our beefcake this week?
Okay, so my beefcake is obviously nutrition related again. Although we had a good one last time that I still hear people talking about with the sports bra pads.
Sew them in.
Still annoyed.
Oh my god! And I think about it all the time now.
Yeah, every damn day. Okay, so my beefcake is that. Should you be eating that? With this literal tone.
No.
That I'm sure loads of people get this question, and me being a nutritionist, I get this even more, I feel, because I think most people assume that if you're a nutrition professional, you should know better. You should be eating healthy. And those are all like arbitrary terms, first of all. Second of all, usually those people who ask me, or all of us, these questions, have no clue about our goals and our preferences and our overall diet and our overall activity levels. So just making this assumption that, it's chocolate, so you shouldn't be eating that, or it's a fatty food, so you shouldn't be eating that, is just such... it just doesn't make sense, and it just really a reflection on the beliefs of the person who asks the question, not us. But I know in many cases people get really self-conscious when they get this question asked, because they feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, or why are they asking? Especially if it's a person that they respect, for example, or if it happens in the gym, and if it's someone who looks a certain way and they think, oh, that person might know what they are doing, and if he's asking me or she's asking me that I should probably not be eating that, because otherwise they wouldn't. And we might get like just all worked up in our heads about what we should or shouldn't do. Stop it. No one else knows you as well as you do, and a person who just asks you this question but doesn't ask you any other questions has no right to comment on your diet. If they are trying to help you and you've given them loads of information about your diet, and they ask you, oh, do you think this is the best food to support your goals? That's a very different discussion. But if this is the only thing that they ask you without knowing anything about you, just forget it and just move on with your life, and just I don't even really like to comment on it. But definitely you shouldn't feel like you should just come up with an explanation and just try to explain your way out of like, oh, I haven't eaten chocolate for like 3 weeks, so this is my first piece of chocolate. No one cares. Eat the chocolate if you want the chocolate. Like it isn't anyone's business. So yeah, that would be my gym beef or beefcake.
Exactly. You don't need to justify yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to justify yourself to anyone really ever about really much of anything, especially what you decide to eat. God forbid, eat the chocolate.
Yeah.
Like, live your life. Live a little.
Exactly.
Tagline. Live a little, eat the fucking
Eat
chocolate.
the chocolate. And so the mean.
And so the pads and the stupid sports pads. Oh my god.
So passionate about both of these.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Okay, guys, our next question for Rita is, why am I so much hungrier some days than others?
Okay, so again, I have no idea who asked this question, so I don't even know if it's a female or a male, but basically it's just how life is. We all get hungrier on some days than others. It has to do with a lot of factors, actually. Sleep being one of them, stress being another. Also like for females, like the menstrual cycle, for both males and females, activity levels, and just training intensity. So there are really like no like clear cut like answers to questions like these, because there are just so many factors. So if this is an issue for you, my suggestion would be that you kind of track your hunger and eat accordingly, whatever your goal might be. So you do not have to feel like you have to eat the exact same amount of food every single day, because someday we are just hungrier. So why not eat more on those days when we are hungrier and less on the days when we are not as hungry, and just balance it out over the week. I think we talked about it last time I was on the podcast as well, how it gives us a lot of dietary flexibility if we follow our hunger cues and follow our like activity levels in terms of determining how much we want to eat on a certain day, but even in every single meal. Because some people just don't get as hungry during breakfast time, but they get very hungry in the evening. So if you force yourself, if you're one of these people, and if you force yourself to have breakfast, but then you're way hungrier in the evening, you might just end up in a calorie surplus instead of just eating more according to your hunger, and just pushing your meals, like the bigger meals, towards the evening time. So really, there are many reasons why you could be hungrier, and none of them are wrong. The only thing that I think would be something that you can actually do about would be the sleep restriction or deprivation, really. So if you are not sleeping enough, you are going to be hungrier the next day. So it would be ideal if you could just improve your sleep so that it doesn't happen as often. Because for either of, or like any of the goals that we have, sleeping enough will just be useful either to maintain our hunger or to keep our hunger hormones at bay, or to be able to optimally perform in the gym, or just to be like able to repair our immune system for general health.
Nice. Life hack. Sleep is probably the solution.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the top ones I would recommend.
Nice. Love that. Awesome.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty, guys. The next question that we have for Rita is, what is the deal with chicken and rice? So just context a little bit for the audience. This is kind of the typical bodybuilder's meal, where it's chicken and rice, chicken and rice. Sometimes it's chicken, rice, and broccoli. I'm sure you see this on Instagram all the time as like the classic meal prep. So what is the deal with chicken and rice?
So I will assume the actual question is, why are so many people choosing to eat chicken and rice? Either in a bodybuilder's diet or just like for general population as well. I think it's probably because, and I could be wrong, because I'm neither a bodybuilder nor have been alive when chicken and rice came around as the main sources of dietary intake for carbohydrates and protein. But basically, I suppose it's because chicken is an easy source of protein, because it's primarily protein, because most often chicken would mean chicken breast without the skin, so that's basically almost no fat, and chicken doesn't have carbohydrates either, so it's basically just protein. And then rice is usually just white rice without any sort of additional flavoring or fats used for cooking, so that is just mostly carbohydrates with a very low fiber content. So that is just an ideal source of carbohydrate to restore glycogen stores after training, and it's just a very straightforward meal. Like there's like no surprises there. You have your carbs and you have your protein, and then if you add the broccoli, you have your health, I guess, or just the color to make it less boring, I imagine. There's absolutely no need to live off of chicken and rice. Also, you can vary your rice and eat like more whole grain, but it kind of brings us back to what's the best source of carbohydrate. So if you want a more complex carbohydrate, you might just choose something that's a higher fiber, like wild rice or red rice or whole grain rice. And if you want just a quick source of carbs, then white rice is absolutely fine. But then it is also kind of the reason why bodybuilders tend to choose white rice, because it is not very satiating due to the lack of fiber. So they are often in like a massive calorie surplus, so they need to eat a lot of meals. And eating a lot of meals to take in that many calories can be quite stressful for the digestive system. So if it's easier to digest because it's a simpler carbohydrate source, it's not going to take up as much time, and they are going to be able to utilize that for their performance or just bodybuilding purposes. So really I suppose this is the main consideration behind that. But for general population, I would always recommend variety and preference. But if someone is really struggling to hit certain targets, then usually it can be a good idea to just eat more simpler carbs, for example, to up the calories.
Nice.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty, our next question for Rita is it important to vary my sources of protein if I'm trying to hit my daily protein target?
Okay, so I actually know who this question is from, and there is some extra context to it, and I would really like to talk about that bit as well. But first of all, like, it really brings us back to my previous answer that I would always recommend a more varied diet, just because most of the foods that we eat are consist of different building blocks. So even if it's just like a protein source, protein is broken down into amino acids in our bodies, and each protein source has different levels of the different amino acids in them. Usually animal proteins are considered to be complete protein sources, so they would have all the essential amino acids that we require. Plant sources might not have that, but even with the animal sources, there's always going to be a difference in the level of like each of those amino acids. So variety would be useful. If someone has like a condition where they can't actually eat either ethical or otherwise can't actually eat certain types of protein sources, then obviously they will be more restricted in their choices. So I would still vary between at least a handful of different types. But actually the question came with like an additional consideration, which was that if at the end of the day you still have like 60 grams of protein left, can you just eat like 3 yogurts of which are like the ones that have like 20 grams in each? And I would really consider again the goal of that individual, because with protein intake, if the goal is muscle gain, then the protein servings should be more spread out throughout the day. So you're not going to find a massive benefit of eating 60 grams over eating like 30 grams, depending on the size of the individual. So why eat that much more? Like the only reason is because for the day you want to hit the target, but it's not actually going to help with the muscle gain more than the 30 grams would potentially, again depending on the size of the person. So there's no real necessity to eat that much protein in a single meal. Same if someone is trying to lose weight, if you end up at the end of the day with 60 grams of protein left over, even if you eat a source that's 100% protein, which is like none of the sources that we have, like even like chicken or whey wouldn't be 100%, but for every gram of protein we are considering 4 calories. So if it's 60 grams of protein, 60 times 4 would be 240 calories. So if you take in 240 calories, and let's say you're not even hungry, but your goal is fat loss, wouldn't you be better off not having that and just increasing your deficit? Or if you are actually hungry and you are not getting any sort of extra benefits apart from like what you would get from eating like 20, 25, 30 grams, then why not just eat the smaller amount? But getting back to like the variety part of the question, if you can keep it varied throughout the day, not necessarily in a single meal. So it wouldn't be a problem if you eat 40 grams of protein just from chicken in one meal, but then you have it from, let's say, eggs, and maybe in another meal also add in some lentils. So just a good variety between plant and animal sources could be a good consideration.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty. Our next question for Rita is, can I get stronger and lose weight at the same time?
Yes. It is not like mutually exclusive, but it is more difficult than either just losing weight or getting stronger, just because we would have to consider a couple of things that would be more specific to our nutrition and training in these sort of cases. So getting stronger will like require us to train in a progressive manner, and also to build muscle. So basically, the two things that we would have to consider would be protein intake to maximize muscle recovery and building, and then also training performance, which is fueled by carbohydrates, but also potentially caffeine and other supplements. So basically, what we want to make sure of is that our training is properly fueled and is a priority, both in terms of energy levels and also like nutrition. So if someone is trying to lose weight at the same time, they are going to be in a calorie deficit, if they know what they are doing. If they are in a calorie deficit, that means that they are going to eat less at every meal probably, or at certain meals. But I would usually arrange it in a way that the meals around training don't suffer too much. So I would take away the calories from other meals that are not directly influencing training, either performance or recovery, so that the training can be a priority even at this time. So think about like carb cycling, which means that you would save up quite a lot of your carbohydrates for your meal before and after your training. And then also think about caffeine and training times, just to actually feel like you have the energy to train, because those will be important to build strength, to perform really well in your training, and in the end just to of course build muscle as well. And then of course with the recovery meals we need to focus on the protein intake as well, but the protein intake has to be high anyways to have its satiety, which is important in a calorie deficit. So yes, it is possible, but it is a little trickier. So the considerations would have to be slightly different than if someone just wants to lose weight or build muscle.
Nice.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Alrighty. Our next question is, what is your favorite meal to eat out at a restaurant?
So whenever I get questions like this, I always feel like it's a loaded question. It might just be me, but I never know if the question is aimed at me, Rita, who is just a person who goes out to restaurants, or aimed at me, a nutrition professional who is required to give a recommendation for the audience now. So I'm just going to give a recommendation for both, I guess, just because I don't want to disappoint anyone. So if I, Rita, go out to a restaurant, I will always choose something that I wouldn't make myself at home, because it's like too much faff, or like it's a cuisine that I'm not that familiar with, or it just needs like a lot of ingredients, or thousands of hours of cooking and washing up. So I would always choose something that I would probably not cook for myself. But it can be anything, really. I personally try to make sure that my meals have enough protein in them for any meal that I go out for. Recently, I go out more for like brunches rather than like lunches or dinners. So I would often go for like pancakes, but I guess this is the nutritionist in me talking. I often would ask for like some poached eggs on the side that I would have, and then I would have the pancakes, just so that I can make sure that I hit my protein target as well. But my choice wouldn't be based around what I should be eating necessarily. It's more about like what I fancy from the menu.
Nice.
As a nutrition professional, I guess I have to bring it back to, what is your goal? Like, are you currently dieting and you're going out to a restaurant and you want to make sure that you're still progressing while you're eating out? Or are you currently bulking or eating for performance? Because those will help determine what you should be concentrating on. I would usually recommend, if someone tries to stay quite strict while they are on a weight loss diet, for example, that if they are going out, it can be easier to choose either something that's higher carbohydrate or something that is higher fat rather than both. So if they crave pasta, maybe choose something that's with tomato sauce and chicken, which would be lower in fat. Or if they crave a steak, maybe choose a steak with like salad on the side. So it's, even though it's higher fat, they are saving some calories on the sides. But if someone is just going out to a restaurant every once in a while, and it's not like a regular occurrence, my main recommendation is just to choose whatever the F you want, because really it's a treat, and we don't often necessarily get the option to go out. So don't feel like you always have to choose the best option, whatever that might be in your head or for your personal goals, because this is just one meal over whoever knows how long. It's just like when someone has a birthday, just eat the cake. It just it's not the end of the world, whatever you end up choosing, but also you can work your way up towards that meal in advance, or adjust your week after you went to the restaurant if you are really keen to stick to your goals. So really just try to enjoy the meals. It's not don't make it more complicated than it has to be, but I hope I managed to give some basic recommendations if someone was interested to get those instead.
Nice. I like that. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Go out and enjoy the food with your friends or family or whoever. Love it. Awesome.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Everything Hurts and I'm Dying. If you want to get a hold of Rita or find out more about what she does, you can get a hold of her on Instagram at prioritize_you. That's prioritize_you. And that's prioritize with a Z or a Z, not an S. Brits, take that. Okay, awesome. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Rita.
Thanks for having me, Julia. Thanks, guys.
Always a pleasure, babe.
Everything hurts and I'm dying.
Thank you guys so much for listening and watching Everything Hurts and I'm Dying. I'm your host, Julia Krause. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can send us an email at questions@ehaid.com. That's questions@ehaid.com. You can also check out our website at everythinghurtsandimdying.co.uk or ehaid.com. If you want to get a hold of me, you can check out my Instagram at TrexTraining20. That's at TrexTraining20. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Have a great rest of your week.